for coming to join us here at the Kota Community Church of Christ for our Bible class and worship. If you're dialing in online, we welcome you as well, and good to see you here with us today. We'll begin our hymns in praise to God with hymn number 621. Hymn 621, Welcome, Delightful Morn. 621. Welcome, delightful morn, thou day of sacred rest. I hear thy kind return. Lord, make this moment blessed. From the low train of mortal joy, I go to reach immortal joy. I go to reach immortal joy. To them one sacred day, where God and saints abide, aboard divine joy, then thousand days beside. I love it for where God rejoices to keep the Lord and shining horn, to keep the door and shining horn. Now may the King stand and fill his throne with praise. The scepter Lord extend, one thing that bless thy faith. Let sinners in thy quickening word, and learn to know and hear the Lord, and learn to know and hear the Lord. Amen. Our next hymn will be hymn 638. Hymn 638, When the Roll is Called Up Yonder. When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more, and the morning breaks eternal bright and fair. When the safer birds shall gather over on the other shore, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. On the bright and cloudless morning, when the daily Christ shall rise, and the glory of his resurrection share. When his chosen ones shall gather round his home beyond the sky, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. Let his labor fall and master from the dawn to setting sun. Let his talk of all his wondrous love and care. And when all of life is over and our work on earth is done, and the road is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the road is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. Our hymn before the opening prayer, hymn 531. Hymn 531. After this, we'll have an opening prayer followed by our Bible class this morning. 531. The Lord's my shepherd. The Lord's my shepherd, now not one he makes me down to He leadeth me the quiet waters by. Yet though I walk in depths of fear, yet will I fear not ill, for thou art with me, and I walk and something comforts him. By table thou hast furnished in presence of my foes, my days are closed with honor, and my cup overflows. Goodness and mercy all my life shall worthy follow me, and in God's house forevermore my dwelling place shall be. Please stand as we pray together. Let's all bow heads and pray. Our gracious Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Be thankful for the first day of the week that we are able to worship thee physically and virtually, to study a portion of thy word, and to sing songs of praise to glorify thy name. Thank you also for your love that you sent your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, this earth, to sacrifice his death for all sins so that we can reconcile back to thee and able to have the hope of eternal salvation. We thank you also for your providence and your kindness that you have blessed us with each day. Father, as we about to study a portion of thy word, which will be taught by Brother Alan, as he expound on the topic of coping with change and crisis on a series of marriage. That you bless him with wisdom and clarity in speech. And also pray that we'll be attentive listeners and with open hearts and mind and able to apply into our daily lives. We pray that today's proceedings will be one which is pleasing to thy sight. We also continue to put our trust in thee, that you bless us with good health and keep us safe wherever we are during this pandemic time. All this we pray and give thanks in Jesus' most precious name. Amen. Thanks for the time. Very good morning to all present. Glad that you can join us today, and for those who are tuning in online, we are happy to have you as well, and hope that you will be able to benefit from this lesson this morning. We are actually continuing a series of lessons on marriage, and today being the 5th lesson. Probably is the last. This is the last before we move into the lesson on dating, right?
Not sure why dating comes after marriage. But anyway, really the ministry head has leader has arranged such a way. In the first lesson that we have learned from Peter Chin, PC, we have heard that marriage is actually indeed a good thing. Marriage is something that ordained by God and something that we must, as human man, cannot put apart, right? Put asunder. We are not allowed to do so. So marriage is actually maybe one company has put it maybe in the right way, that it is a celebration of life. It's not a point whereby you got married and that's it, right? It's a celebration throughout the whole life that you have with your spouse. On the 22nd of February 2022, few days ago, right? Many tie their knot, right? Get married, and I noticed on the Facebook, one brother Lin from Lima Pin Church of Christ tied the knot. I was expecting we have a series of marriage classes, and expecting some may want to tie the knot during this time, but well, did not happen. Probably coming soon, right? So I hope these lessons and that we have go through will help us understand about marriage. And today being the last, may not be the interesting one, because we're talking about changes and crises and all this, so may not be the so-called exciting topic to us. Okay? Marriage, after marriage, they're bound to have some changes. There'll be a lot of changes that some may have more changes than others, and then we will discuss later on. And some of the changes may lead to problems, and problems may lead to crisis. We know in this world today, we heard of crisis. Ukraine is under crisis now, right? So we're being attacked by so-called Russia. We have some crisis in our country, and so we have seen crisis. So marriage will also have crisis if, let's say, the problems are not handled in a proper manner. And we have couples if crisis cannot be solved, cannot be reconciled, then it may lead to separation and eventually divorce. And we can see that divorce rates are high in some countries, even in Malaysia. And all of the above that I mentioned will actually drastically change the relationship between the two person, right? The two person that come together in marriage. So today we'll be looking into. I have to admit that I'm not a specialist or counselor in marriage, but I will try to get some materials that I'm modified to guide you, to teach you, to share with you. All right. And then at the same time, I will take some time to look into a couple in the Bible that probably has gone through a lot of the things that we're going to discuss, and we see how this can apply to our life one way or the other. And then we'll probably conclude with some points where we can learn how to cope with our marriage. How many of us has been married for more than 30 years? Right? Okay. So we have people who have married more than 30 years. 30 years, if people who are yet to get married, and people who are thinking of getting married or just got married have questions, I think I'm not alone, right? I have these people to help me to answer. Thank you for that. We look into the word crisis first. As I mentioned, crisis in Ukraine. Crisis is a situation where one or both persons in a marriage, right, experience a time of stress. Crisis cause stresses that negatively impact their normal function or relationship. A crisis is a difficult or dangerous time in which a solution is needed and quickly. Why is it dangerous? If it's not done properly, settled properly or handled properly, it will cause separation and cause divorce, right? And crisis is also a great time of disagreement, confusion, and suffering. If a couple is in crisis, there'll be a lot of disagreement. Whatever you say may not make sense, right? And then there'll be a lot of confusion. One say one thing and the other say the other thing, and also have suffering. But you look at the three definitions that I've gathered and I've modified. It looks like the one important thing that I've highlighted there is the word time, isn't it? So marriage is a lifelong journey, and the time that we have together as husband and wife is not managed properly will cause crisis. We look at change. Okay, people say that change is constant, right? This is something that we know, right? Every day we have changes. So changes is something like we talk about term it as constant, and this is true for marriage. So as the years pass, the couple change, the spouses will also change, and our marriage will change. So we will look into that, the changes. So things that can change in a marriage life, priority and focus. So maybe when you are single, you're a bachelor, right? Your priority may be different. Your priority may be this, and your focus may be this. But once you get married, your focus, your priority will change. Okay. Previously, you are looking into maybe working into maybe you have some certain type of preference in terms of maybe your hobby or your habits, but you change after that. Your lifestyle change, your habit change, right? Maybe you are playing a certain game 3 times a week, so now you have to play once a week. Or maybe you have a career that you work three jobs a week to meet some financial goals that you have. Some people may be crazy to work three jobs a week or a day, right? But now they have to slow down because they cannot do so because they are married, right? And they may have some ambitions. They may have ambitions of going overseas to work and go this and that and do work, but because of marriage, they cannot go and do all these things. So there are some limitations and some changes in their. They may have financials, right? So when you're not married, all that you earn is yours. But when you married, right, what you earn is shared between you and your wife, right? So you cannot say what you have is yours and what your wife is yours as well, right? So there's a change on financial goals and then values, right? For those who are married, maybe from different culture. Let's say you have a wife from another nation, or let's say a Chinese married an Indian, or Indian married another race, right? Maybe a European. So the values change, the culture change. So these are the things that you need to adjust, right? Then, if let's say you're married as both are Christians, then you probably have less issues in terms of faith and belief. But if you have married another person who is different faith, then you have to adjust your life. Yeah, your wife go to church on Sunday, then you have to stay at home or you have to follow him to church. So we have seen. Then you have health issues as well. Some after they married, their appearance different, right? They go the tummy and then they go their size change, So physically they change, then maybe they don't look attractive anymore, But these are all physical changes that can take place after a person get married. So many more, right? The things can change. But these are changes that can happen in the marriage life, and this may cause a problem and misunderstanding, and if it's not carefully handled, it lead to crisis and separation. Some couples, they after some time they think back, and then they have a wishful thinking. Then how they wish things were like before. Things were like before when they get married, right? So these things will never happen, right? So how can rich couples learn to live and accept changes? These are the notes that I have got and have modified from this guy called Jeffrey Larson. And then because he mentioned that marriage will go through 3 stages. First, number one is romantic love. It is an exciting, passionate love that both feels when they first entering a relationship. It's very exciting, but over time the flame will die down somewhat. So when the first person first get married, right, they're so excited and everything carries on from the time of dating, but things change slowly. And then what they call here, the flame dies down somewhat. Then the stage 2, delusionment and distraction. This is what happened after both have been together for a while. First, they become this illusion as they start to realize things are not exactly perfect. For example, one spouse is terribly bad at keeping the house, or some may be very grumpy and doing some work, or maybe some sleeping habits that you may not encountered before. At the same time, when the kids come along and the jobs come, then the jobs pressure and all these things, so it distracts the relationship, right? So both husband and wife, the spouse, will be affected when things change and the job stresses and when the kids come along. So this can happen. So have to be able to understand that there is another stage called this stage 2. And then stage 3, decision point. So although not every couple will experience serious crisis or commitment, most will come to realize that at some point that they have to make a choice. Facing this reality of everyday life and the change they will experience, couples either decide to split up, just live with it, or to move on the next together and work on things. So this is the third stage is the decision point. So couples must be able to understand that they will go through trouble and they have to come to realize this reality and this decision that they have to make. So if they make past this decision point in a positive way, they can get to a new and deeper stage of relationship. But to do so, must develop some skills and realistic belief in place. So we will discuss on these 7 skills that this person Jeffrey have recommended. Adjust each other's expectations. The need of to being realistic in what to expect from your spouse and your relationship. Okay, you need to be realistic. The spouse both must be realistic. So is it still logical to expect every dinner to be lavish? Every dinner to be a good and have to be done in a very classy manner, or you still wait for extravagant gift, on every occasion. So there's a need for both of them to talk to each other and meet the expectation of each other, right? When the person get married, probably the financials are changed, right? They cannot afford every time to have all these things. So they must talk to each other. Most important thing, they must prioritize what they need most, right? They cannot be expecting the husband or the wife cannot expect every time there's a quick occasion to have a good big celebration, right? Or give and these things, right? Both of them must talk to each other and see what actually do they need for them in their life. Change yourself first. Okay? Some couples, one of the couple may want the other couple to do this, right? If let's say they can be like that, then we'll be happy. So sometimes it's going through life and after going through marriage, we know that sometimes things cannot change so easily. Sometimes we wish that if let's say our couple, our spouse, if let's say they were to behave this way or act this way, then everything will be fine. This is something that we think that it can happen, but it's not so easy, right? So we must also change on our side. We cannot expect the couple the other spouse to change, but not yourself. Value your commitment. Even the most romantic and loving marriage can fall apart if the commitment isn't there. Having a firm commitment of sticking together or sticking with relationship through good times and bad times make a difference. Couples, right, must have this commitment, right? They are committed when they say I do during a marriage vows, right? They are committed to be together until death do they part, right? So this is the commitment they must go through, whether it's difficult or good times, they must stick together. So that when problem strikes, even when problem strikes, right, they fall back to this commitment. They fall back to this commitment and they stay on course. They stay on course throughout their marriage. So very important that couples must value the commitment they have made during their wedding vows. Negotiate your agreement, the disagreement. Every couple will have disagreements, sometimes big ones, right? Those who are married for long, sometimes we have agreement every day, sometimes in a week, you tend to have disagreement, right? And sometimes this could be issues that happen again and again, right? But it's not that every disagreement can be a problem. It's how the couple handles them. Learning to deal with conflict constructively can get the two out of disagreement. If you're facing disagreement every day in and out and the same thing, sit down and think and see how they can manage things in a different way. Accept some differences. Couples must be able to accept differences of the other, each other's, each of the spouse. There may be some long-term issues that the two will continue to have conflict about for years, maybe even though, maybe even throughout their relationship, right? Some may have issues with their in-laws, right? Some may have issues with their interests, right? Some may have issues with certain way you spend money. So that's a long-term issues, right? But they always can come to a compromise on terms in this type of situation. So if it's not fixing every problem that matters, but treating each other with respect and kindness, even though both disagree. So even though we get disagreement, right? Above that, the spouses must be able to agree and or respect each other. Don't forget the acts of love. Before they get married, they always do things that are beyond, go the extra mile and all things. But after get married, they don't. They tend to forget, right? Can they do a small favor for each other? And does each spouse can do a small favor to each other? Now, can they spend a moment in the day to sit down together and talk? Can they send a loving text or a short note? You know? When before they married, they're so busy texting, but after married, they don't text anymore, right? So, and then before that, they can do all these things and rush this and that, everything they can do, right? But after that, they do not. So this is a couple should continue, right? As I said, marriage is a celebration of life. Continue to do what you think, but as what I mentioned earlier, must be realistic in what we do, right? But these moments are very important because they help to keep the connection between the two spouses, keep the connection strong, and this will create new memories and new positive moments together. For the older couples, I believe now, especially when the children grows up and they get married and they live their own. So now myself and Annie, now we can talk to each other. So now we have more time to speak to each other. Now, right? Previously we were so busy with our children. Right? I mean, Kevin now at home I'm facing with her every day. So especially now MCO, working from home, and I have to face her every day, right? And some of my colleagues or my friends who have retired told me that they can't go home. They can't stay at home for long because the wife doesn't want them to be at home. You know, the wife prefer them to go to the coffee shop to spend time, read newspapers and nothing, but stay away from home as far as possible. You know, he said that old man don't come back. You know, he come back only I got more work to do and anything. So that MCO really changed things. So now my friends who have this issue now have to stay at home because they are locked down, right? So they face the wife every day and the wife to face husband every day. So in a way MCO is good to help to connect back the relationship between the spouses. Don't forget the acts of love, right? Okay. The payoff, right? So this is the last as the years pass, both will experience change and face challenges. The marriage will transform, so will be the spouses. These moments can be difficult, but together they can face many challenges that life brings. Challenging time can strengthen the bond as a couple and remind each other of their resilience. Life together may change, but the couple's commitment to each other can remain as a constant. For example, I think I have mentioned before to members, right? After Kevin was born, after the first year, Annie has some depression problem, and that something that we really didn't expect, and that came out to be later on. We found out to be what you call as a schizophrenia, right? And it was actually a chronic. Later on, it became from acute to chronic, and that illness was something that we didn't expect and something that we happened in our life, and it actually basically ran down our lives. So we were quite exhausted with this problem, right? But thank God that through time and courage and strength, we manage to pull through. So this is called resilience, just like a sponge. And you push and you press a sponge, and sponge will bounce back. So our life need to be we must need to have the resilience, and life can change. You may not know, right? You may be maybe your sick, the illness of one spouse may be different, or maybe you all have a different experience. But these are all things that can happen in our life. But we need to be resilient to be able to overcome all these challenges. Now we look into, as I mentioned, we look into an example of a couple, Abraham and Sarah, which when I go through the Bible and look at Abraham and Sarah, I feel that they have something for us to learn, to see how we can cope with changes and crisis. This notes is all purely mine, and this if let's say there's any comments, any critics, please feel free to let me know. Genesis chapter 11, verse 29. It says Abraham took Sarah as wife. So this is just to start the discussion. So Abraham and Sarah got married. Okay? Abraham and Sarah got married. So Abraham took Sarah as wife. So as you know, marriage is a union of two individuals. So definitely there will be changes that I mentioned earlier in terms of lifestyle, in terms of habit, culture, everything. Right. So two different individuals were coming together. Definitely there will be changes. And Sarah was barren. Right? Health challenges. So when you are married and then you suddenly found out that you cannot bear a child, then this can be a change in life, right? You have social expectations. You know about Hannah, when he was without child, pray to God, and God give her Samuel, right? So we know that when a person without child in most of the social cultures and all, when you and a wife do not have child, they put pressure on the spouse, especially the woman, right? So Sarah was barren, and this is a stress, right? A crisis in a way to her life, and it depends on how Abraham took the situation. In this case, there's no comment. So I believe Abraham must have taken it in the right way. Then Genesis 11 verse 31 mentioned that Sarah, which is Abraham's father, brought Abraham and Sarah from Ur, the land where they were originally, and they go to the land of Canaan. They're supposed to go to the land of Canaan, but on the way they stopped at Haran, and they dwell in Haran. So you just imagine if you were to relocate your life, relocate your family to another place. Definitely you face a lot of changes, and to a land that not a foreign land. You definitely will have a new environment. You face social expectations again, right? Imagine Brother Roger who came here, relocate from US to here, right? There's a different culture, different changes that both Roger and Donna had to go through. And then when he went to Taiwan, and he went to Ukraine, so when he go to different places, you have different expectations, right? You have changes. Definitely, both husband and wife will have a lot of discussions. Would have a lot of maybe disagreement, confusions, and whatnot. Then Abraham received God's promise and instruction to go to the land of Canaan. So we know that Abraham received God's promises. Right? Then again, when you go to the land of Canaan, it's unaffected life events. So you suddenly you move to another new place and new environment. And in Genesis chapter 12 verse 5 and Hebrews 11 9 to 10 and mentioned that Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan in tents. You move. It's like Roger comes over here. He don't buy a house. He rent a house, right? Similarly, probably in Ukraine and Taiwan, they don't own it, but they just rent. So Abraham don't take the place because of his faith to God. He doesn't own the place, right? He just live in tents. Both Jacob, Isaac, and Jacob live in tents. And Genesis 23 verse 1 to 6 testifies the one fact that when Sarah passed away, Abraham have to go and look for one person to get a place to bury Sarah, because they don't have a land of their own. So he had to purchase a burial plot to bury the wife. So just imagine you go to a place whereby you're like nomad, right? You feel that there's a security issues and social expectations are different, right? So you go to a place where you don't actually own. So how you feel, how you know, there'll be a lot of discussion between the two couples. Next, Genesis chapter 12, verse 10 talks about severe famine forcing them to move to Egypt. You know, unexpected life event again, and then they have financial and health issues. So we just imagine when there's a famine or happening in a couple's life, right? These are something that are unexpected. They will definitely find financial problems. You know, just like if it's due to a financial crisis, the husband and wife may have financial problems. They will face financial problems and also have a lot of stresses and also cause health issues as well. Next, come to Genesis chapter 12, verse 11 to 19. Okay? This is a situation whereby, because Abraham married a very beautiful wife. So beautiful wife have beautiful problem, not beautiful problem, but you have when you have a pretty wife, you have problem. But that's a challenge, right? Not problem. Right? So those people are not married, looking for a spouse, think, right? When you get a pretty wife. In this case, Pharaoh when he was in, Egypt, Abraham when he brought Sarah to Egypt, right? He's afraid that, Pharaoh saw his wife was beautiful, Sarah was beautiful and attracted, and Abraham had to tell Sarah to say that he's actually my brother and she's a sister and all. So that caused some misunderstanding. Why? Because because Abraham want to preserve his life. Because if he says that that Sarah is his wife, probably Pharaoh will kill him, right? So that was self-preservation. So there's issue when your wife is pretty, lah, So or your husband is handsome, you have problem as well. So Genesis chapter 16, verse 1 to 6 and 15. Sarah permitted Abraham to have intimate relationship with Hagar, and she's conceived a son, Ishmael. Against social expectation, when your wife or your spouse couldn't conceive, right? So for many years, it then caused a problem, right? So this Sarah take decision on their own to allow Abraham to have intimate relationship with Hagar, and then Hagar conceive and be child. So when social expectations come too heavy on the person, you make them to make difficult or wrong decisions in this case, right? And that causes a lot of bitterness. The husband have a relationship with the maid, so that causes a lot of bad relationship, isn't it? Bad feeling, bitterness in the family, and that causes a lot of stress in the family as well. Genesis chapter 16, verse 1 to 2. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son. Imagine when you are 90 years old, you conceive. You imagine what kind of health issues you're going to face, right? For 9 months, you carry a child, and then at that kind of age, and both are not young, right? So Abraham is almost 100, and at this age, you have carry a child. So that causes a lot of health issues, even when you give birth. I just imagine even a person at 40 or 50 give birth also have a lot of complications in terms of giving birth. How about a person that is more than 80 years old or 90 years old? And then having a old so-called at old age, and they have a child. If you have a hyperactive child, how the old age going to cope with the child. So that the issues that can happen in the life of a person. Then Genesis chapter 16, verse 8 to 11. Okay? Abraham listened to Sarah to cast out Hagar and his son. Of course, when Sarah gave birth to Isaac and Hagar's son Ishmael off, right? And then made Sarah even more bitter. And finally, eventually, Sarah had to tell Abraham to cast away the mother and the child, Hagar and Ishmael. Okay? But with God's consent, so to speak, right? And Abraham cast the two of them out. So that is a family feud, and then in Genesis chapter 22, verse 1 to 2, and even Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17 to 19, God tested Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. If you have only one son, and then God promised that this son will be the where the promise will come, and then at the same time God want to sacrifice his son. So just imagine what will happen, transpire between the two of them, Abraham and Sarah, throughout the days and throughout the night, every moment in their life they've been talking until at the point whereby they sacrifice Isaac, isn't it? So they took 3 days to travel. Everyone took 3 days to travel to Mount Moriah to sacrifice, to offer this sacrifice. So just imagine what will go into their minds and thoughts to sacrifice your only son. Right? There'll be a lot of discussion, probably a disagreement, and probably will be crisis in the family. And then towards Genesis 23, which we have spoken earlier, about the death of Sarah. So Abraham mourned the death of Sarah. So death is a separation. When there's a separation, definitely there'll be a crisis, right? Some of the spouse may not be able to handle it well. This is a change in life, and it also can cause crisis. In conclusion, right? The reality is that over time, every couple has to contend with change, such as misunderstanding, as we have learned just now, unexpected life event. There may be some changes, some health issues that you may not expect to happen can happen. Suddenly, one of the spouse get cancer, or some of the disease or illness that cannot be treated, or you have some personal differences. Right? Social expectations are different. So, just to name a few. So even such challenges, a couple can have a happy, emotional, and spiritually healthy marriage. So Christians should understand that these changes and problems will come, right? But you need to manage it well, know your commitment, then you will have a spiritually healthy relationship. The choice is in the hands of the couple to turn the marriage around, to stop the hurt, to rekindle the love that they had for each other back in the beginning. So one of the ways that you can handle situations like that is think back the time when you are dating, and think of the time before you married, how lovely was the relationship. Go back to that time and imagine, right? If let's say your spouse has grown in size and everybody look different, two of them look different, go back to the time before marriage and you appreciate and be thankful. Another way is to become the best of friends. Right? Brother Eng has taught this topic, becoming the best of friends. One of the way to handle coping changes and crisis is to become the best of friends. And what Brother Kevin has mentioned, be on the same team. Always argument is because you're on a different team. Be on the same team to avoid argument. Beware of foxes, not KCL, KCB. Beware of foxes. This is from Brother Andrew. Right? Beware of foxes. Beware of the challenges that can come into the life. Right? Just like, for example, like Sarah was pretty, and Abraham was afraid that she may be taken away, and there'll be a lot of other changes in life. Challenges in life like financial and others that can cause relationship to strain. Okay, last but not least, right? I have a list of maybe advices or points that maybe we can look into, especially for those who are thinking of marriage or maybe have married but may have some issues in life. Can consider these points. Trust each other. Very important in my experience that we need to trust each other. Husband and wife must trust each other. If they don't trust each other, then there'll be a lot of problem, right? And husband and wife cannot assume, right, that they don't have to tell the spouse something because they assume that no, they can be trusted. So you must actually reassure your wife, reassure your spouse on this thing. Respect. Okay? Respect is very important in relationship. Right? We know the Bible mentioned that husband is supposed to head a family, so wife need to respect that, and so husband also must know that he has to love the wife as his own, just like Christ loved the church as his own. Pray and have faith. Couples must be able to come together in a quiet time to pray and to have faith that things that they pray will come and will be supplied by God. Talk and listen. Both couples need to talk to each other as well as listen. Those don't talk and no listen. Okay, just talk and also listen. They must show interest, right? Interest in each other's work, activities, and etc. And some couples, maybe after they marry, they don't show interest in each other anymore. If let's say, for example, you love maybe certain games, right? And then you used to go and play your game. So you can bring along your wife, or your wife got some activities that you can bring along the husband. Try to bring them along. And you don't, not just because you trust each other, but because you find that if let's say there's any opportunity to do things together, do it together. Right? For example, I used to travel to branches to visit my branches. Let's say I visit Kuantan branch, I'll bring my wife, Annie, to Kuantan and let her stay in a hotel while I do my work. I go to Johor, same thing. When I go to Malacca, same thing. So whatever opportunity I can go, let's say on my own, I will bring her so that she can accompany me as well as keep her busy. I mean, keep her occupied. Be thankful. I think one of the things that we need to do as husband and wife is to be thankful of your wife, or thankful of your spouse. Just be thankful of who they are and what they mean to you and what they can bring to your life. I think that is very, very important. And this thankfulness must be something that you don't only keep to yourself, but something that you need to express to her, express to your spouse that you are thankful to that person. Remember God's commandment. Very important that we need to remember God's commandment that marriage is not something that we can just take it lightly. Marriage is a commandment from God. It's an ordained institution ordained by God. Just like the church is institution ordained by God. So we need to keep it pure and holy, and we need to preserve it as much as our can, or preserve it with our own life. So with that, I to conclude my lesson, and I hope that this marriage series of lesson on marriage has been helpful. And I believe that one of the ways also to improve your marriage is that to make sure that when you date well. You know, so that probably that will be the next series of lessons that will be helpful for those who are dating. We have a few more minutes. If anyone has any comments, contributions, especially I'm not the only one who's married long, but I think there are people who have been married longer than me. So please feel free to ask if you have any comments. Yeah, brother Andy.
Thanks, Brother Alan, for your lesson. Really appreciate the tips and principles shared today. I was wondering, while change is inevitable, which it will happen in marriages, how could a couple best anticipate the change as well, so as to maybe lessen the impact of change when it happens?
Can you specify or be more clear on what you?
Sure. So, will happen. All right. This who is able to then it will still be there. Then it may reduce the impact of that change on the relationship. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts, or maybe our brethren here who have many years of marriage experience on anticipating change and how a couple could go about doing that. Thanks.
Yeah, Thanks, Andy, for the question. Off my mind is that one of the way we can, or like in many ways, to anticipate a change. There could be a few ways. Just like when a married couple, just going more advanced, let's say a married couple expect a child, they go to they will go to a prenatal class, able to understand how to handle children when they comes out, what to do before the birth and after the birth. So they will be trained on what to anticipate, before and after, so they know. So basically, I believe marriage also can be same. There could be a marriage counseling. So you can actually you learn about marriage, learn about before and after. So you attend maybe. I think I'm not too sure about uh, how is it done. But I believe in Malaysia we have, before a person get married, because of the high divorce cases. So the government has I think has probably introduced a kursus perkahwinan. So before they get married, they go through this kursus, and then they learn, because of the high divorce rate. So they want to make sure that they know and understand what is marriage before they get married, and to avoid these repercussions. So one of the ways is to go through some courses, and maybe another way is to go through to seek advice from the older, maybe the elders of the church, the married people who have successfully have a successful marriage, can be a good guide for them as well. Yeah, Sister Poching.
When a decides to tie the knot, they are to be as one. So they ought to love each other just as much as they love God. So when they have a common goal and they care so much for each other, they are just like a chameleon that can blend into any environment or diversity, and you are able to handle it better. Change will always be there, but if you are both bind together, it's harder to break, you know. So I think in a way is that when you care so much for the other person, you won't want anything to happen between the bond. So I think that will strengthen the marriage in whatever they have to face. That's just my personal opinion.
Thanks for your comment. Anyone else have any additional comment? Brother Sam.
Hi. Um, just to share, I think some of and it's partially addressing what Brother Andy asked. I think some of the things that we can help ourselves to anticipate can be in a couple of various situations, right? So one is like before marriage, in the dating process, right? Don't rush it. Right? You need to know the person and get to know the person as much as possible during that period, because um, that after you make the decision, it's very hard to undo, right? You find something so serious that you've realized this is going to be tough, right, for both sides, because both may view it as important and may not want to compromise much. So at that stage, it's an important time, right, to discover each other, and like I said, don't rush it. And I think once you are in it, there are things that we could do to proactively learn and anticipate what could possibly happen. One of them is to see what happens around us, right, and observe relationships and events. It may not even be in church, but trends that are happening. Because these trends and these issues, don't think it only happens to other people. It can also happen to us, right? People who are so focused on work, people who take overseas jobs and are separated from their spouses, people who have marital issues and then have a affair after that. All these are things that are not to say it won't happen to us. It can happen to us if the circumstances, allow it, right? Or we allow it. So, learning from other people, discussing that, just raising those points for consideration prepares us that when we are not in those situations, for those situations, right? So that we know we don't go down those steps that will get us into trouble. But having said that, I think a lot of the things that happen in life, you really can't plan for it. health issues, for example, right? You really can't sometimes foresee that. Sometimes job issues, you don't necessarily see that coming. And those things, you take it to God in prayer. You talk to people, your elders, close people, and see how to go through that, family and all. But for those that are within our control, you'll be prudent to actually maximize the learning from each other, and in that sense minimize any issues that may come later.
Thanks, Brother Sam. So much things to gather from that. Sometimes we don't we can't expect we wish we can expect that, but actually sometimes when things happen, we really cannot expect. Let's say something like health issues, unless we do something like something we call crazy, like what one of my colleague who did. They were matchmake, and then they went through a thorough medical test checkup before they get married. So if let's say the medical results came out to be proven that the wife cannot conceive or whatever, so they may not enter the relationship. So that is, I mean, that is how some of the people in the world do. But no, I believe that we don't do that, right? Marriage relationship is not because it's between two persons, right? And it's not marriage is one of the things that we want hope for in marriage is to have a child and offspring and all that. But sometimes we may not have it, but that doesn't mean that you have to break that relationship, right? This relationship that we have agreed, we have come together for that purpose of coming union between two lives, and our so that we can live together for the rest of our life. It's not because we need necessary to have children at the end of the day, right? If the children don't come, so that we can't say that we put the marriage aside. So with that, we have reached 10:30. I hope that you have learned something from these lessons, and let us now arise and have the closing prayer. Thank you.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, our Almighty Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We thank you for this wonderful Sunday morning that you have given us, that we're able to gather here to learn another portion of your word. So stop by your able servant, Brother Alan. We thank him for taking the time to prepare and to share with us on the lesson on marriage and how we can actually prevent and overcome crises. We pray that what we have learned today, that we'll be able to take to heart, and to also to as for those who are married and those who are looking to marry, that you continue to work on their relationship and continue to put you in the center of the relationship. I like to pray for those who are on their way here, that for the worship service, that you bless them with safe journey, and pray that as we also prepare ourselves, that we prepare ourselves in spirit, prepare ourselves to serve thee and to be able to worship thee in spirit and in truth. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.